Welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon, and today I'm talking with Andrew Dupy. And Andrew, thanks for squeezing me into your calendar, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. It's going to be a really fun conversation. Andrew is the Chief Relationship Officer at LeadersPress, and we're going to learn a lot about what they do because it's similar to what we do, but we labor at the same love, really, helping business owners create books, become best-selling authors, and we want to dive into that of why business owners should become an author. But Andrew, tell me about how in the world did you get to doing what you do?
For a very long and circuitous route. I
got one of those too.
I know. You shared that with me on my podcast, so
yeah.
Fair is fair that I get to come here and do the same.
That's right.
I was, for most of my life, I was professionally an educator. I have degrees in history and literature, and the lit side is where I ended up in publishing. But the history side is what I spent most of my life teaching: history, government, political science at a middle school, high school level, and even was a principal for a while. So really, I just frankly got burned out on that. I had been working many times in my life, 2 jobs, because of how our school system pays our educators
so well. Yes.
And so I used my natural sales skills that I had. There's this old saying that the salesmen aren't made, they're born. So right. My dad was a salesman. I guess I caught a little bit from him. And so, for years I did that. I was very successful in working in either retail sales, or I even managed a store for a little while, a bookstore for a little while. But I was really burned out on working in public education and, being a babysitter rather than an educator. And my ex-wife was at that time a virtual assistant, and she had found LeadersPress through that. And she said, this is a growing company that needs a salesperson, and there's only 3 employees.
Wow.
why don't you knock on Alenka's door and just say, hey, maybe let's do a pivot. So that is actually what I did. I went and took another few jobs because I was taking a risk and jumping from something stable to something brand new. And eventually those little extra jobs flittered away, and this became full time. And we went from doing 5 books a year to 50 books a year, and now hopefully 100 books a year. And it's just really taken off.
I love it. So let's dive in and talk about what do you do, who do you work with, and why is it important? So let's just unpack all of that. You guys have been around for a few years. Who is your audience? Who's your clientele? Things of that nature. Let's talk about that.
So what we found, when we first founded our company, it was a little bit of trial and error of, we find our niche. You got to what are we really working at? But what we found that was the most successful for us, and the way that we could help people the most, because that was the thing that we had to think about. How can we actually provide the most value to our customers so that we can stand out? And we did that by looking at who is able to make money off of having a book the most successful. And we found that was generally CEOs and entrepreneurs that were in very heavily customer-facing spaces like coaching, consulting, sales, businesses in which the more that your audience knows about you, the better and more successful you can become. And we found that there was a challenge that some people many had when they went into these businesses, and that is really simply that when you're a coach, you're working, you're your own boss, but man, that means you're working 100 hours a week. Right. In some cases, you can't fit a book into that. And yet you have to really have one to be able to unlock the full potential of that kind of business. So, here we come. That says, hey, let's hire us to be your staff, not just your publisher, but also your staff, your people that you're going to bring in. And rather than you going and a la carting it, piecemealing, don't go out and spend $150,000 on 10 people you don't know. Come with us, spend half that on a group of people who do this every single day, and you already know what we are able to do and have our track record to look at.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. You said a lot of things there that we just need to unpack a little bit. Is whether you're a coach, a CEO, you're fighting that battle of the sea of sameness. That how do people choose you, and how do you really display your knowledge as a thought leader, and there's really not, I mean, there are a lot of ways, but there's not a better way, in my opinion, than becoming an author of your
Yeah.
book and putting it out there, right? Is that what you all have found?
That is absolutely it. When you're thinking about that, you're right. Sameness. If you're going into coaching, let's say that you're going into sales coaching, I can't even tell you how many sales coaches there are in the United States.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't throw a rock and not hit one.
that's right. That's right.
But so yeah, how are you going to stand out? How are you going to be? How is my methodology of sales different than Jim's over there or Bob's over there?
Right.
It's all about being able to brand yourself.
Yes.
Coaching is branding. I mean, does people like Tony Robbins, do they have any kind of really pure special secret sauce? Not really. I've heard his stuff. A lot of it's very common sense and a lot of it's just very motivational, but he sells it so well. And he sells it well by branding himself, by putting out books that tell you everything you need to know about him already. And he uses that to take it into speaking. He uses that to take it into seminars, webinars, all the things that he does based off of pumping out books. And so many coaches that did that that same way, that's how you be able to actually make yourself stand out. You must be your own brand.
Yeah, and it's really, really important. I use Tony a lot in my examples because he was at years and years and years ago, like 35 years ago, he was a no-name guy doing seminars, making people walk on fire until he launched his first book, Unlimited Power.
Yep.
That book made him a household name and launched his empire, right? And he's done great with more books, but I tell business owners, you can do exactly the same thing. Dave Ramsey did the same thing. John Maxwell did the same thing. Zig Ziglar did the same. I mean, it's the formula's already there. What's missing is your book. And what I find, and let's talk about this, is the time that it takes, because the business owner's already wearing so many hats. How do you help them get that book created without them laboring for hours and months and years?
You got to bring a professional writer in, and you got to, first of all, throw out the word ghostwriting if you need to, if you want to, and all the stigma that's attached to it. I use professional writer now just simply because, but I don't have a stigma in my mind attached to it. But throw out the stigma, because there's none. This is how business people have been writing books at this point for 50, 60 plus years, probably longer than that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And think about being able to bring in the help to actually get the book written for you. When you're thinking about working with somebody like you or I, you're talking to people that have a full staff. You have publishing directors that actually know how to bring a book to market and know how to get a book out of you through interviewing you. Little things like this, just talking back and forth. You cut down your time investment on writing down from hundreds of hours to, let's say, how about an hour a week?
Yeah.
For 15 weeks.
Yeah.
That's more doable.
Totally. Yeah. And
so at that point, you have all of that together. And then you also have on top of that, the editing and everything else that's going to be built in that you don't have to go to look for and do yourself.
And everything else, because everybody thinks, well, I'll just write my book. Yeah, great. Good luck. Number one. But number two, editing, proofreading, design, format, layout, ISBN. Format. It goes on and on and on and on and on. So, all right. So that's cool. So let's talk about the value. We talked about, getting your content out into a book, separating yourself from the sea of sameness, right? So if you're a coach or a whatever, CEO, even going after new business, how do you position yourself differently with that book? And how do you find, Andrew, are they going to make like millions of dollars selling their book on Amazon?
That's the first thing that you have to dispel in your mind when you're writing in nonfiction. I have a saying to people, if you want to make money off of the sales of your book, then write yourself a romance novel and make up a fun name to put on top of it. Call yourself Claire Steele and make and get a picture of a very, very attractive older woman for the back cover. That's how you make money on a book for the sales. You don't do it in nonfiction. Nonfiction sales are all over the place. You're right. You have to position yourself. You have to use this book to create something that's going to be built from it. You're going to be needing to use that book to help steer people onto your content and onto the platforms that you control. Whether that be just actually calling you up and saying, hey, I want to do business with you. Hey, you're a realtor. I want to do business with you on selling, moving some houses. Hey, you're a consultant. I need somebody to help my sales staff. Or whether or not it is just simply to get public speaking gigs, to get podcasts, to appear on things like this, to be able to get things out there that hook people to come to you to build business off of you. And that is a revenue stream that is unlimited and evergreen. It never loses the momentum of book sales. It never becomes the thing that is a fad for a few weeks and then goes away, and now your book is just gathering dust. It becomes a living, breathing heart of your business that keeps driving you onward.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite examples actually is Simon Sinek, because he did that TED Talk, right? And it went virtual. And then he was smart, because right after that, what did he do? He created a book called Start With Why. And from that book, he now gets speaking engagements where they're paying him $100,000 for an hour to talk about Start With Why. So he's making money not from his book, but through his book, through his ideas, because he's a thought leader.
Right.
And I think business owners can do exactly the same thing, right?
Exactly. You have to look at a book not as the end goal. You have to look at it as the beginning. It's not, you don't put it down and say, okay, we got it. It's out there. It's finished. Now it's just going to go out there and magically do whatever a book does. Go fly, book.
Whatever it does. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, you got to use that. You have to use that as your absolute central point. And you don't want to give them all the answers in the book. You want to give them enough that they are interested. Yeah. And at that point, then they take the action of connecting with you into your business.
Yeah, very much so. And we teach, clients, and I'm sure you do too, is about, how to use your book on your website, to download my book, to get them in your funnels, to use it for referrals, there are so many ways to use a book in your marketing that it blows my mind, Andrew, that there are still people out there questioning the value of becoming an author. And it just, I don't know.
Again, it's all there's a societal pressure that is kind of putting books down right now. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of a thought. We can quote all the way back to the 80s. Egon Spengler said print is dead in Ghostbusters. It's not dead.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
People have that idea. So they kind of dismiss books. They dismiss books, especially nonfiction books, as something of the past. Like, now it's my blogs, now it's my Facebook account or YouTube. But no, books are still heavily consumed. We've just changed the way that we consume them to where now you have them on your tablets, you have them electronically more than you do actually physically. So there's still just as much value that you can have with a book. You can make money off a book and not even sell a single copy of it, as long as you just have it.
Yeah, without question. And really, because it goes back to what we talked about earlier, you're elevating your expertise in the mind of the audience, and you're giving them something that your competitor's not giving them. Everybody has brochures and business cards, but how many CEOs or dentists or whomever have their own book? And that alone positions you differently, right? And it gives you that era of, wow, this person must really know what they're talking about because they wrote a whole book about it. It's crazy how we think about authors, but we do elevate them in our mind. And that's the value. And once you become an author, you're an author for life, right? Books have shelf life, right?
Yeah, it never goes away. Your legacy is absolutely cemented. Yeah. And as you say, that's something you can integrate and have into everything. You connect it. You connect click-throughs in your book to your website. You have a QR code in there. Somebody clicks through. They are directed onto your media. Right. There's so many ways that you can have that thing continue to do business for you, even if it's just sitting on a website that people can look at.
That's right. Yeah, seriously. So when you think about, as a business owner, a coach, a CEO, thinking about, I don't know that I have enough to create a book, or I don't know how to go about doing it. And you've talked a little bit about that, but address that, because I think there are business owners out there who they have forgotten more about their industry than most people will ever know. Yeah. But there's this internal fear that, well, I've really got to put myself out there. How do you help people get past that, business owners get past that to go, no, you really are an expert and you do have something to share?
Yeah, they have to immediately get rid of the fear of that, because everybody has enough in the book. It doesn't matter, especially if you're talking to someone. And that is actually, it's really easy. The same way that our writers turn their books into stories, that's how we turn it into them. We tell them stories about ways in which we've ran into those situations before. And then all of a sudden we get somebody talking, and man, a whole more than a book flows out. One we're releasing. I'll go ahead and do a plug for one of our authors right now. Hans Kierstead, Dr. Hans Kierstead's Life, the Universe, and Curing Everything is coming out finally. A long process working on that. But yeah, Hans had a similar issue with that. He's like, how do I get everything out? How do I get this into such a structure? And that's why it took so long for us to write his book. But with help, what we found was, man, when he started talking to our project directors, the books flowed in those conversations. You don't see it yourself when you're looking at yourself in the mirror. You don't see all of it. It takes somebody else to kind of talk to, hold your hand a little bit, be your accountability partner, be your sounding board, to really start to dig into all the things that you're right. You've forgotten that you already because you know so much.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, creating a book is a lot like marketing your own business, right? I'm a marketing guy, but I've got 3 marketing coaches that look at my company because I'm so close to it. And when you're trying to create a book, you're in your own head, you're too close to it. And that's why you need somebody like Andrew and his team, or, to talk to guide you, to ask you questions, to go, tell me more about that. That's interesting, because you're like, well, what, right? Because your audience needs it at a like a 3rd to 5th grade level most of the time. And you forget it. So can you create a book by yourself? Absolutely, you can. I did it. Lots of people do it. Is it the best way to do it? Yeah, probably not.
No, I mean, exactly. It's definitely something that you can do. But everyone that I have run into that has come at it without really spending years researching publishing before they even tried, you're immediately overwhelmed by what publishing is. You mentioned earlier in our interview, it's like, you're correct. There's everything else. There's all those things that you'd realize you have to do to get this done. And that's not even then thinking about the marketing, because, just the production, when you're done, it takes you years, can cost enormously large amounts of money. Traditional publishers aren't knocking on people's doors in nonfiction anymore. They're very selective now, way more than they used to. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge that somebody can help you navigate in, and you can concentrate on why you need the book rather than the how.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really important, because, all right, let's talk a little bit about the book's done. You guys published the book. What's next for your authors? What does a business owner do now that he has a book, as far as, getting on podcast or using it in his marketing? Drop just a couple ideas for the business owners who are like, what would I do with this thing?
I'll do a shout out to one of our partners, Corey Poirier. I asked him a question like that in one of our early interviews. He said it varies.
It varies.
And I knew exactly what he was talking about. And we're in the same business. I know what you just did there. Unfortunately, that is a correct answer, because it's wildly different depending on who you are. But the easiest and the best ways to do it is to immediately begin thinking about, all right, what is the first thing that I can do to segue this into actually getting interest? And it is, at that point, taking the steps into integrating into social media. If you don't want social media, it's fine, but a lot of people that do a book do, and they think about how that's going to work. So the first steps is to actually get that on a landing page. The first steps is to get that out on your bookstores, get your previews out. And then you can begin to look for, how can I take this and do speaking engagements in my industry? What kind of areas, what kind of places are doing that right now? Do I do conferences online? Easiest thing to do really is to start getting into a podcast circuit, because bloggers and podcasters like ourselves look for people that want to talk on these subjects that have books. That starts when you have that book. And you are immediately put on the list, especially if you can become a bestseller. Because you're going to get noticed. and people are, and at that point, if you do the outreach yourselves, people are going to say yes. And that's where you start with that. So there's lots of services that you can use that help you with that we steer you towards. I mean, that's as well of having someone with us. When you're done, it's not the door gets closed. It's okay. Now let's start recommending who we know that can hook you up with podcasts. Let's start recommending who we know that can get you big time speaking engagements and have had success in getting people $100,000 an engagement gigs. Let's talk about somebody that can help you completely redefine your website and redo everything and start to use this book to integrate. So those are the very first steps that you do, is to get it out there and start getting yourself out there to push it. Because if you don't, at that point, actually do start doing the legwork yourself, I mean, the book's as good as it is what you do for it.
That's right. Yeah. And it gets integrated into everything that you do.
Yep.
And it just becomes like wearing a shirt or a tie. It's me, right? And when you can do that and put it in the hands of people or on their Kindle or whatever, and get it distributed, and it makes a world of difference, because people then start talking about you. And then one podcast leads to the next, and pretty soon you realize, wow, I can do this. And then it's a mindset, really, to realize, wow, I did this. And that you've mentioned legacy a couple times. It's like a life's work. I mean, when I published my book in 2013, I remember when the box came, Andrew, and I opened it up and there was my book. I mean, it was a moment in time.
Oh, I know. I did the same.
It's crazy. And then, I mean, I signed a copy to a guy in my community group at church. Gave it to him because he's starting out his business. I'm like, here you go. I signed it, and they went, I mean, it's just crazy. I got signed. You signed. I'm like, well, yeah, that's what you do. But it's just so much fun to be able to give value to people in a totally different way, and let them really connect with you, because we read books one-on-one. And like this, we don't gather all of our friends. We're going to read a book together. No. We read them one-on-one, and it lets you build that connection with the author. So if you're a coach out there and you want to build connections, there's no better way than to give somebody a copy of your book, let them read it over the weekend, and then have a call the next week and say, what'd you think? And because they've just spent a couple of hours with you one-on-one through the pages of your book, with no social media bugging them, no TV, it's just them and you. And that's the beauty.
It's the concept of pre-framing, and a lot. Every salesman knows what that means. That means that you don't want someone that's completely cold. You want someone that has at least been warmed to the idea of working with you when they come in the door. And the way that we do that primarily is through ads, through things buzzing at you, through pop-ups, through commercials on television, through little things like that. That's all pre-framing. That's all things that are getting you interested in purchasing the product. The book is pre-framing. It's just done in such a better way. It is. Because you're right. It's so much more personal experience. You're choosing to engage in the process. It's not banging at you on a website. So you're starting out with a friendly relationship with your potential customer, not oh God, not that ad again. Oh wait,
that's right.
That's the big difference.
It's a huge difference. Yeah. And we teach a lot about credibility marketing, and just positioning yourself in a way that you're like the heart surgeon versus your general doctor. Both are great, but the heart surgeon has higher credibility. When he speaks, you listen more so than your general doctor does, right? And so that's where you want to be. If you're a coach, a consultant, a CEO, or whatever, a business owner, you want that positioning so that when you say, here's what I recommend you do, they're going to have enough trust in you. They go, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And that starts with your book, because you have everything in here. And I think the other thing, Andrew, that really values books and still makes us think of authors on a higher platform is the sheer height of the barrier to entry. I can create a blog post really fast. I can do a podcast fairly easily. I can do videos like nothing. A book takes a lot longer to do it well. And I think the audience knows that, people know that. And that's one reason authors are on a different platform, because somebody knows you went through some stuff to get this thing done. This was not an overnight thing, right?
Absolutely. No, I mean, it is, It's a lot of work, and it can be a lot of work for yourself, and you can come out the other end of it and you can tell, man, that was a nightmare that I don't ever want to do again, because I spent 5-6 years working on this and I love having it, but boy, I'll never do that again. Or you can be on the other end of it. It's like, I invested in the beginning of it to make it easy. I found people out there that knew what they were doing, and it was a really fun experience. Yep. It was great. It was great. I worked with great people. I made new friends. I made new relationships. And yeah, it may have cost me a lot up front, but I think I would have probably paid more in the long term the other way. So yeah.
Well, absolutely.
Which experience do you want?
Yeah. And if you do it right with the right strategy, with the networks of people you can connect people with, it monetizes itself.
It does.
It pays itself back time and time and time again, because if you're a business owner or a coach, how long are you going to be doing this? If you've got a 10-year run ahead of you or a 20-year run ahead of you, there's no better investment than to position yourself as the expert in the eyes of your audience. Create a book. It's going to be there, and it will pay for itself hundreds of thousands of times.
The sooner you have it, the more it's going to pay off for you.
Absolutely. All right, Andrew, we could go on forever.
We could.
This is just like too cool. So how do people find out more about LeadersPress? Where do they go to find out more information about how you guys could help them?
LeadersPress.com. Everything is all under that one gigantic tent. Come and take a look at our podcast. We actually have our page go live for that, LeadersPress.com/podcast. That will be very soon. And yeah, and if you want to learn a little bit more about me specifically on Amazon, Don't Buy the Watch is my book. It is a very short book that shows that you don't have to have a 200-page one to get to the point and tell us stuff about you. But yeah, take a look at it. You can learn a little bit about me, and maybe we can work together.
I love it. Don't Buy the Watch on Amazon. We'll put that in the show notes as well. I've got your LinkedIn profile there. So LeadersPress.com. Andrew, thank you, man. This has been so much fun.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
You are quite welcome. We are going to do some more fun things together. Have a great week, brother.
You too.